Welcome back. I'm your host, Chong Wei, and I'm here to support our STEM community as we navigate the complexity of life and career. Today, as we move through the first month of the year 2026, several industry analysis reports have been released, and recently I've been spending some time with the latest McKinsey Chemicals 2025 report published in last year in December. And I'll be honest, reading it really sparked a lot of personal reflection. Having navigated my own pivot into and then out of the traditional chemical sector over the last couple of years, I've seen this structural change, as the report mentioned, from the inside. So if you feel like the industry is shifting under your feet, you aren't imagining it. McKinsey points out that in just 3 years, the sector has undergone 20 years of outsized performance. This is why we see giants like 3M. The other day, I saw a job posting. It's a high-stakes role for global portfolio directors on semiconductor materials. And I've also seen other companies of the chemical giants like Dow and Merck are also aggressively pivoting into this area. And here's the perspective I want to share with you today before diving into this insight. Chemistry and materials are the invisible enablers of the global economy, whether it's solving the cooling crisis in AI data centers, developing life-saving drugs in the lab, or high-stakes work of PFAS removal or environmental remediation. Chemistry is the fundamental layer of every innovation we see. Honestly, as a 18 years old choosing chemistry as my major, I did not recognize that magnitude. I just knew I was just as strong in science as I was in literacy. And I'm also just as capable as my peers in science engineering. So I choose it, I want to do it, and I stuck with it gradually and persistently until today. And now looking back, I see how those fundamental materials are what move the needle on a global scale. Yeah, 20 years later. However, while this value of chemistry remains constant, it's just the business language to describe this value has changed. The McKinsey report points out we are living in new reality. We are moving from an era of selling more chemicals by the ton to selling performance by the results, so the outcome dominates. Today, we're going to interpret what that means for your career in chemistry and beyond chemistry, beyond science. And we'll look at where the growth areas are and how you can map your next professional move to where the value is being created. All right, part one, technology and where we stand. I want to point out McKinsey report, webinar slides. Major takeaway from this shift is a move from traditional scaling to system level challenges. For 20 years, the chemical industry was a reliable market outperformance. Revenues and profits, and there are hiring. But the last 3 years, as you have seen in the news, not besides the technical, the very high-tech industry, but also the chemical industry as well, it has undergone almost all those gains in the past 20 years. By the end of 2025, the industry total shareholder return lagged behind almost every other major sector, delivering only a 7% return compared to the 20% seen in the broader market. This industry is not just a temporary slump that will fix itself in a few months or the very rosy promising as the CEO and the public news that they predict. It's actually facing a deeper long-term problem where companies are building factories faster than customers are buying products. That means it creates a supply-demand gap that could last over maybe the next 5 years also. So much longer than it was previously perceived as a 2 to 3 years, it will be a cycle. So it'll be a longer slump imbalance of supply-demand gap. The webinar also pointed out a very interesting part regarding the geographic difference. The pain isn't felt equally everywhere. India, and it has been the superstar and showing very high growth and extraordinary 21% return over the last 2 decades, though even now that has slowed recently. And meanwhile, Japan is the outliner in the short term, showing increased performance actually, over the last few years, where regions like China, Europe, and North America have largely flatlined and declined. So Japan that's a quite surprising country. And the fact right now, back to the 3M job opening on semiconductor materials. We often think of the semiconductor industry as purely like about software, circuit design, and now with the some companies that are building into America. For this job, opening for global portfolio director tells a different story. While many perceive 3M as a traditional manufacturer of commodities like tape or post-it, they're actually powerhouse in specialty chemicals. In the first era of this industry of semiconductor, electrical engineers were the stars, but now we are facing like power efficiency, heat management, interconnect density are not central design requirement. As I mentioned in the last episode of the semiconductor research breakthrough in the lab, they are solving this problem. If you have a background in thermodynamics, physical chemistry, or material science, you are those people the industry needs to solve this multi-kilowatt power challenge. McKinsey knows that for chemical companies to survive, they have to move into high value specialty chemicals, and which we have been seeing in the media, which I also heard about that when I was in the industry. However, a myth, rabbit hole. There comes this specialty myth. Many believed shifting to specialty chemicals was a safe haven, but volume growth for these products have been essentially flat since 2016, while the rest of the world GDP has continued to climb. Essentially, specialties are facing a silent crisis too on zero growth. We are producing higher value chemicals, but we are not selling more of them. The focus is no longer how much can we make. So now it's a good time to shift our gears into something relevant to chemicals, but in a much higher growth industry. Part 2, people and workplace. The webinar highlighted a roadmap for AI integration that varies significantly by job function, which is interesting. The chart reveals a time to impact spectrum that explains why different departments feel the effects of changes or technologies, specifically AI, at different speeds. So if you look at the far right of this chart, you'll see R&D, research and development, the home for most of our audience. Our work naturally takes the most time to move from a light bulb moment, aha, to a physical product on a shelf. However, it's a long, and usually it would be perceived undervalued if you are not seeing a long-term gain. The impact there is perhaps the most transformative, potentially delivering a 20 to 40% reduction in time to market for new molecules or new materials or new technologies. And because of this long-term value, and because this talent is also so rare, McKinsey is telling CEOs not to cut investment in R&D or high-level technical talent. They observe that many are learning that delaying difficult portfolio decisions can impose a high social, political, and financial cost, particularly when combined with an aging workforce and emerging skill gaps. Ooh, that's serious. As processes become more complex, the industry needs professionals who can manage multi-model workflows. What does that mean? That means blending hard science with AI-driven predictive models, or other basically means that you combine a various of toolkits and skills together, and instead of just specialists or subject expert matter on something very focused. So in the report, Semiconductor Digest, as Shari Lees, the VP of Global Workforce Development at SEMI, noted, talent is no longer a downstream issue. It is core infrastructure for innovation, economic competitiveness, and national security. So while R&D builds the future, other departments are facing the front line of the company's immediate survival. So if you are in a corporation, you are likely to work or have the interface with other departments. For example, on the left-hand side in procurement and pricing, these functions sit at the opposite end of the spectrum, where results are seen almost instantly. Rapid savings using AI in procurement is already uncovering 3 to 7% savings on direct spending. And in pricing, AI-driven engines provide a 3 to 5 boost in return on sales by predicting market shifts before they happen. That's amazing. The McKinsey consultants were clear. In this new reality defined by low growth, these AI-enabled workflows are the way to remain competitive. For example, generative AI for discovery. We are moving toward material design discovery, where AI suggests new molecule structures based on global trends rather than just trial and error in the lab, which I have seen in the literature maybe when I was in PhD, that's a couple years ago. There are already research doing that, and I believe there will be tons of the researchers are also doing and making it more scalable. So we are also even seeing this AI sales copilot that scan vast database to find new application for old products, essentially giving a second life to existing portfolios, which I believe the chemical industry are also applying this strategy. So the message is clear. The industry must reinvent its core. For the technical professional, this means your expertise is the soul of materials. It must now be paired with either AI-first mindset or other multi-model workflows to solve the yield and discovery problem. Now that we touched on job functions, skills, so naturally the question is, who is doing the work and how can you, my listeners, play in the part? Let's get into part 3, the business and the future. So the new reality in chemicals is a goal to move away from volatile commodities and toward the high-value materials that power our digital world. To understand your place in this future, we have to look at how the business is literally rebuilding itself from the ground up. The industry is currently undergoing a fundamental reset of its cost base. Think of it as a massive, high-stake home renovation and surviving a long-term economic slump. Chemical companies are currently spending nearly double their usual amount on these renovations. And this is just not buying new equipment. It involves enclosing older, inefficient factories, merging departments, and fundamentally changing the company's geographic footprint. So companies are moving away from general industry benchmarks and instead asking, what is the absolute minimum we need to spend to keep the lights on and still stay safe, which I have been seeing in inside as well. And there's a lot of focus on this side of lower cost, but still playing to be safe in the manufacturing side. So this shift is driven by a stark change in how much bottom line profit the company makes for every full-time person it employs. During 2021 and 2022, it's the after COVID and there's a high demand. During this period, many companies sold their best 12 months ever. Demand was high and companies had tremendous pricing power, meaning each employee's work generated record-breaking profits. That sounds so great, and that is actually a prime time. For me, I graduated in 2021 and got this new job in 2022. Everything really feels very promising, and I feel so positive and excited and really looking forward to into this dynamic and the technical expertise development. However, today, those profits per person have dropped significantly and now nowhere near those peak levels. This is why the industry is turning so aggressively to other areas or to AI and digital tools. And very on the focus, but we'll see how that hype would go. So the goal is to boost productivity back up and find hard dollar savings without necessarily hiring more people, which is a little sad, but we will figure out. I believe every professional will figure out using their skill set and to be adapted to every industry change. All right, so where the growth is. As fundamental research into entirely new chemicals has stalled, the focus has shifted toward application development. So that means finding very specific, high return use cases for existing science. So target the hotspots. If you are looking for growth, map your skills to high-growth specialty segments. As the McKinsey consultant pointed out, like semiconductors, data centers that could include cooling and power, electrification, and healthcare. Other aspect, which is the sustainability, but it's not the old, like for we're doing sustainability just for sustainability's sake. This has not the case anymore. It's the 2.0 version. Rules like regulatory compliance, carbon pricing, and circular production still remain critical, and especially in protected market like in Europe. And then the big challenge, as they point out to this reinvention, is a talent pipeline that is not growing as fast as the new facilities being built. Workforce remains a prime bottleneck, making your specialized STEM background core infrastructure for the industry's survival. As the Semiconductor Digest, there's a quote. So the new reality refers to the fact that the old ways of doing business in chemical is not anymore. And if you feel like you are not technology enough because you didn't do work like at Apple, Google, coding, but look at companies like Dow and Merck and 3M. They really are doing this shifting and pivoting, and there will be a spot for you. I'll leave you with this thought. A 2025 McKinsey report just confirmed that the era of business as usual for traditional chemicals is over. When you see a company like 3M hiring for semiconductor materials, you are seeing that long-term reinvention in action. They are moving away from volatile commodities and toward the high-value materials that power our digital world. For you, the professional, that means your materials and chemistry background is no longer traditional. It's the new reality, as the report mentioned, of the technology. So stop looking at your experience as old school or irrelevant just because you are not familiar with the sector yet. Your science is very fundamental and the future is building on. I'll see you in the next episode.